Celebrity Book Club. Who's that knocking at the door? It's all your friends, you filthy whore. Your husband's gone and we've got books and a bottle of wine to kill. It's Hollywood. It's books. It's gossip. I'm shook. It's memoirs. It's martinis. It's Studio 54. It's Celebrity Book Club. Come read it while it's hot. Celebrity Book Club. Tell your secrets, we won't talk. Celebrity Book Club. No boys are allowed. Celebrity Book Club. Say it loud and proud. Celebrity Book Club.
Buzz me in, I brought the Cuervo.
Hey, best mate. We're back talking about Harry's spare.
Oh, spare.
Spare. I just want to read a quote that made me so inspired.
Oh, please, mate.
Yeah. So let me set the scene for you. Haz is in Vegas with his mates as a send-off. He has to go back to Afghanistan to become a pilot because he's brave. And he's partying it up. I need something to commemorate this trip, I decided. Something to symbolize my sense of freedom, my sense of carpe diem. For instance, a tattoo. Yes, just the thing. Maybe on my shoulder. No, too visible. Lower back. No, too racy. Maybe my foot. Yes, the sole of my foot, where the skin had once peeled away. Layers upon layers of symbolism. Now, what would the tattoo be? I thought and thought. What's most important to me? What's sacred? Of course, Botswana.
Just please imagine Harry getting a tattoo of the shape of the country of Botswana on his foot.
And then in the shape, it would say Botswana. And picture this also, he's at the pool at the Hard Rock Hotel in Vegas. And he after that, he goes, I need to find a tattoo shop that has a really good atlas. Yeah. Just so British to be like, I do have a really good atlas.
A really good atlas with a really accurate like satellite imagery of the border of Botswana, just so that your work is accurate. Okay.
Anyway, he doesn't get that tattoo.
Thank God he doesn't get the Botswana
His
tattoo.
His mates slam him down.
But he absolutely loves Botswana. He does take Meg there on their second date. So they're going after their two Soho House dates. They're already like so in love.
They fuck the second one.
And they want to give it a go.
Yeah.
And she's like, my summer's so busy.
My summer's crazy. My summer's literally crazy.
And then he's like, she's going on an Eat, Pray, Love trip with her girlfriends. And he goes, because she's so cultured, she had read this book, Eat, Pray, Love.
Eat, Pray, Love. And he's like, I don't read books. I'm not cultured like her. And then also, when she was describing to him what she was doing, she did a prayer symbol to him. Like it was a universal, I'm going on an Eat, Pray, Love trip.
Yeah.
And someone's like, what are you doing this summer? And then you just did prayer hands. And you were like, oh, of course you're going to Bali.
You're going to Bali with your girlfriends. So she's like doing this girlfriend's trip. And he's
with
like,
Silver Tree.
And he's like, it's so amazing that this woman is so well read, because he's like never seen a book in his life. And she's reading like the actual most popular book of all time.
Ever.
Not that I don't think Elizabeth Gilbert's an amazing writer.
Not that we don't also
but I'm just like
love Elizabeth Gilbert to death on this pod, and Eat, Pray, Love changed our
No,
lives.
It's an intellectual masterpiece, but like it's crazy that he thinks that's a sign of someone just like being like so erudite and cultured that they read possibly like the most mainstream publication in history.
It's really so insane. At that part, I really paused and was like...
So she's going on this trip, but her friend told her to keep one week free.
What we're calling?
For magic.
The 1 week free. I'm like, that probably is a line in another Liz Gilbert book.
Right.
Do that.
Save 1 week free of your summer that's already full of like trips and vacations and like fake charity work. Have 1 week free so you can do like another random like fake charity vacation.
And he goes, she even turned down a trip to bike through the lavender fields of France.
Of France, where I famously lost my phone 2 summers ago.
Magic.
Magic.
I mean, when he said leave a week for magic, I was like, nothing reminds me more than my stupid bitch friend Stephen. Where you're like, I'm going to Bali, India, in the south of France, but I think August 7th to the 14th, I'm going to leave a week free for magic.
I'm going to leave a week free for magic and just like yeah, maybe I will end up going to Ibiza and like fucking a random guy, and that's magic. So it turns out
he has like
he has 1 week off between all of his fake charities,
right?
And it's the same
he
week.
loves work, and he goes, "It couldn't be. Would it be the same week?" And I was dusting away at work, and I was like, "Is it gonna be the same week?" Listening to this, and then
spoiler alert, it was
the same week.
They are able to go to Botswana on this date, and again, it's like he like couldn't believe that she would want to take this risk with him, and it's like, you're literally the Prince of England. It's every girl's fantasy to be a princess.
The trip is going to be pretty hooked up,
but again, not like it's not any girl's dream to like become the princess.
True, but the way he describes being, obviously he left, like, I don't want to be royal after reading this book.
Oh, I mean, I guess I just felt like his completely like self-imposed paranoia about the press was just like, I mean, yeah, like it's boring and you are in a gilded cage and like all of that is absolutely true, but at the end of the day, like it also sounds fun. Like they have all these estates. He's constantly on vacations and hunting trips and just like at bachelor parties and just like, it's like, and he's being just like, and then we had to move to this estate, and then we had to go to this estate.
I know. I guess, but it also does seem like you're a little bit forced to be a soldier.
Yeah, they both had to be soldiers, which is a little bit like, I do not want to go in the army. So that's a no for me, sis.
That's a no for me.
Because the thing about Harry is like, he kind of was like, as a non-heir, the thing that sucks is actually being Kate Middleton. Like, that actually sucks. Because A, she's boring as hell.
Yeah.
And she has to be boring because she can't,
That's
like...
what I'm saying, the prison. She has to be
They
boring.
are really in the prison. The heir is always in the prison because they can't... I mean, the Queen's whole thing is literally never having said a controversial thing in her entire life.
And
like,
just being like, you can't
all she
shave.
does is wave.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, all she does is wave. Like,
oh, wait, when Harry convinces her to let him keep his beard at his wedding because he's like...
I look better with it. Oh, when she tugs and kisses
No, because
me.
she's like, it's anxiety relief. He's being so like
I need to touch
I have
right
ADHD
here.
and anxiety and I need my beard as my
Okay,
security
but I
blanket.
also took that as so like doggo beardo guys because he's
It's-
like
yeah, it's
because
very
he was
doggo.
like Meghan
And she's never not seen me with a beard. And you're like, gross.
I'm like, it's so
and it's
like daddy
telling
in
your
this way.
grandmother that, just being like, Granny, like Meghan's never not seen me in a beard, and like I want her to see me in my beard on my wedding day. I mean, I guess you have to because you need the permission.
I mean, I could really also picture you like telling your dad that like you need to keep your beard for your wedding day.
Well, okay, much like Meghan, I'm a daddy's girl.
You're a daddy's girl.
I love how he's like, she still calls her dad daddy.
Daddy.
Oh, wait, well, do you want to talk about the dad?
Let's talk about the dad.
This is actually
That was
maybe
so
the saddest part of the book.
So, Meghan is the dad. They had trouble before,
But
whatever.
she's still,
like,
her parents are divorced.
she's still like having dinner with him.
And like calling him daddy. And like, he's this kind of like sad, old, fat, lonely guy. And like maybe he has a little bit of mental health issues. And then when she starts to get famous, he like moves to this town on the Mexican border. He's being so random.
He moves to like Juarez.
Yeah, he literally moves to Juarez. He starts to really like, go. And this is another thing that I think made the difference between the way that like their ability to handle the press. Ultimately, I'm just like, you guys are young and hot and can like go on vacations all the time. And it just like, as much as annoying as it is to be hounded by paparazzi, and like I'm not saying they're not invasive. At the end of the day, like you guys can just like do whatever you want and have an Instagram, and like
you still just had a podcast that you didn't
you
put
literally
out.
have
like, nothing that bad happened.
And it's like the dad really doesn't get that world. He doesn't like, and he has like no other outlet, and so like he really started to fall victim. And so you remember that infamous photo shoot where. So if you guys don't recall, right before the wedding, he's like, there's these photos came out of him reading like a coffee table book about England, like in a Dunkin' Donuts, and
it was like he was in on the press, like the press set him up to do this.
And they set him up, like they paid him to pose for these photos, like under the guise that these would just be like fake paparazzi photos, and then they even double set him up where they were like they made the story about him asking the paparazzi to take fake photos, and so then. Like Meg is like texting him because they're so obsessed with all the stories about themselves and they're constantly trying to like quash them.
And just like also Harry will be like constantly my friends would be telling me about what was like in the news and I was like stop telling me, but I'm also like but you guys are also on your phones all day long like reading stories about yourselves.
Yeah. And like even the therapist is like, you're obsessed, you need to stop. So she asked the dad, did you actually do this paparazzi shoot? And then he admits to her that he did. And he texts her saying, I'm so ashamed. And then he doesn't come to the wedding. That's like 3 days later. I like really, that like broke my heart. And I was like, that to me is so much sadder than like her getting death threats on Twitter. Sorry.
Yeah, saying like die goblin.
It's like I've gotten death threats on Twitter for saying bisexuals don't exist. And it's like, I only have 30,000 followers. They're the most famous people in the world. Yeah, I'm sure she's getting a lot of like hate comments, but it's just like...
It's not giving the dad any leeway of just like press is crazy and he has no idea what's going on. And he's like a lonely, sad man that's like, is like, what's happening?
And then he becomes like increasingly like paranoid and nasty and talking to more press and they're paying him more to like say mean things about her.
So then Harry goes to the Queen and he's like, oh, Gran, what should we do? And she's being like...
and then she goes...
Write a letter.
Write a letter.
Her advice is always write a letter.
Yeah. Well, no. First, she's like, "You should go visit him."
Oh, yeah.
And then Meg's being like, "I could never get in a plane. The paparazzi would be so crazy. Like, what do I do?" And then Queen's like, "All right, bitch. Like, write a letter."
Write a letter. And she's like, me on a plane in a border town in Mexico, going through security. How would I ever get through? It's also like Rihanna travels.
Yeah. Like it happens. I will also say this one thing where it's like he's so obsessed with the negative press, but like at the same time, there's so much positive press. And they've already, because of their victimization by like the conservative media, they've become liberal heroes at this point. Literally, he mentions in passing.
Oprah has like already interviewed. Oh no, that's later.
That's later, but like there's like 100 different MPs at British Parliament like sanction the British press for their racist colonial coverage of Meg. It's like he has like so many supporters and people who are like on their side, and he ignores that. And you know, we all do this to some extent. But, like, you ignore the good things to focus on the bad.
I think we all do that.
I think we all do that. And I'll go in therapy and I'll say, you know, there were these 10 articles that misrepresented my relationship with my father. And he'll go, yes.
And I'm fiercely private about my family.
But what about the New York City Council resolution that was just passed honoring you?
And you're like, oh, fuck off. Yeah. Like I care. Like I give a cluck. What's not clicking, Harry? It's him saying so like dumb. How much like he loves her friends in Silvertree and like her mom, and they did fly the mom out for the wedding, but it's like they just were not. He was not putting in the work.
Well, and you know, I think on some level, his alienation from his own father, that happens over the course of the book.
I think they could bond. Oh, our dads don't get us.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it is sad. I think all fathers are distant, right? It's like...
Many fathers don't have friends.
Fathers don't have friends.
Famously.
And, you know, who's going to be more distant than Prince Charles? And the whole book is him talking shit about Camilla and saying that when the Camilla era started, like his dad hung out with him less. His dad used to have energy to like run around and horseplay with them.
Oh yeah, the whole thing.
On
and
Balmoral,
he's like, and then they didn't. It's like I don't think Prince Charles like ever was gonna like roughhouse.
Well, it sounds like he was doing a little bit of roughhousing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think he did a tiny bit of roughhousing.
Yes, and then was like, now I have to write my letters and do my correspondence.
Dad's like, I feel like
that's all dads.
I was like, Dad play catch with me, and sometimes he didn't. Sometimes he was like writing a paper.
I mean, my dad was so like literally leader of our Boy Scout troop and was like, being son, we're going camping.
Okay, well, congrats. Some of us actually.
No, I know. Some of us had dads who were closeted and didn't want to play football with you. And you were like, come on, Dad, let's toss the pigskin. I think that Harry is really dumb. I think that one instance of this is when he asked the Queen for her permission to marry Meghan. So they're on a hunting trip. Much of this book takes place on hunting trips. Granny, you know I love Meg very much, and I've decided... Oh, by the way, this scene is also insane because they've just gone hunting. He goes, I had a dead bird in each hand, their limp necks nestled between my fingers, their glazed eyes rolled all the way back, their bodies still warm through the gloves. He's holding warm, dead birds in his hands.
He loves blood.
Yeah.
And after this, we'll get
to Afghanistan and all his kills. You know I love Meg very much. I've decided that I would like to ask her to marry me, and I've been told that I have to ask your permission. before I can propose. You have to? That's my queen impression. Well, yes, that's what your staff tell me, and my staff as well, that I have to ask your permission. I stood completely still, as motionless as the birds in my hand. I stared at her face, but it was unreadable. At last, she replied, well then, I suppose I have to say yes. I squinted. You feel you have to say yes? I didn't get it. Was she being sarcastic, ironic, deliberately cryptic? Was she indulging in a bit of wordplay? Perhaps there was some hidden meaning beneath the wordplay, some message I wasn't comprehending. It's like, you dumbass. She obviously does not like Meghan.
Also, it's just like, it's the queen. What are you expecting?
Well, no, I know. And her just going, well, obviously I have to say yes. You like, she's literally just being like, you're a dumb fuck. Like, you're marrying this dumb American.
From Suits. Like, we're literally British.
We're literally British. I'm kind of watching the monarchy kind of collapse before my eyes that I've single-handedly been holding up for the past 60 years. And you know what? Fine. Like, go off and marry the C-level actress on Suits.
In the one episode of The Crown I saw, it was like also the Queen and Charles when he is just courting Diana and they're on like a duck hunt and she's in like a Barbour jacket.
Oh yeah. Picture of aristocracy.
Charles doesn't have the right shoes or something like that, and it's the same thing, and she's just always like hunting birds. Yeah. And it's men being like, can I marry this biddy? And she's just like, when can I die?
Yeah. Yeah, the queen has had it, honey.
She's had it after her 9 millionth duck hunt.
He talks about this article by Hilary Mantel in the London Review of Books.
Oh, he's like, oh.
Where she compares the royal family to pandas, and he's really offended by it because he's stupid. And it's literally, I have the article here. The article's really funny, and it's also actually a very sympathetic article. The article, she basically argues for the press to be less invasive, and it's like, literally back off, like, they're royals, like, they're dumb, but like, that's their thing, and like, we don't need to like ruin them for sport. But she's talking about, she uses this panda metaphor that I think is like really quite apt. She goes, I used to think that the interesting issue was whether or not we should have a monarchy. But now I think that question is rather like, should we have pandas or not? Our current royal family doesn't have the difficulty in breeding that pandas do, but pandas and royal persons alike are expensive to conserve and ill-adapted to any modern environment. But aren't they interesting? Aren't they nice to look at? Some people find them endearing, some pity them for their precarious situation. Everybody stares at them, and however airy the enclosure they habit, it's still a cage. Like, that's a sympathetic metaphor.
And he's like, we're not pandas.
Right.
We're lions. And it's still him. Also goes to show it at the end of the book when he literally says, I love the monarchy. I love my family. I have no criticism of the monarchy. England forever. I hate the press.
Right. And it's just kind of
and you're like, so really? So that's why I think you're missing the point.
You're missing the point. It's like, oh, well, and that's also, I think, what's so sad, because it's like...
He could be mad at the monarchy, which would make sense and at least be a little more classic rebel, but he's really not.
No, and he desperately wants, like...
To be accepted.
To be accepted, and he misses his family. I mean, you know, he really does, despite his, like, lack of understanding of history and, like, his incuriosity around, like, knowledge and in general, it's like... He does obviously love, like, Britishness.
No, he's always like, oh, Henry VIII. I wish I knew more about him.
It's very like, if only there was some way to, like, attain knowledge.
Well, and this thing happens at Eton, where he went to, primary school.
Yeah.
And this teacher...
Where he barely graduates.
Yes. And this teacher is, like, harder on him.
Right, because he's like, Wales, this is your family.
Yeah, and he's like, because they have to, like, list all the kings, and he can't get it. And the teacher's like, he's also is being so queer and being like, it's actually really inappropriate, like, the way you call me out in class.
No, I know. And then later he's just being like, I, like, did have ADHD and trouble focusing. Yes. And, like, that's why it was actually hard for me to graduate. Not just because just, like, I'm literally, like, a privileged tosser who was just, like, always, like, smoking and not studying.
And watching Family Guy.
In the dorm.
And then the teacher is, like, gives him a ruler with each
with the list
king.
Of the kings.
Get it? A ruler.
A ruler
and
with
he's
a
like,
list of rulers.
And he's like, okay, do you want to, like, learn your list of grandparents or whatever?
And, like, that was kind of like a détente between the teacher and him, being like, yes. Fine, I'll make this little, like, special allowance for you.
No, and
dumb
I don't
fuck.
think we are different than our families.
No. okay, later when like Will gets mad at him because he's like, Africa should be my
thing.
portfolio.
That's that's a huge contention is that Harry thinks Botswana and Africa is his thing. And then it's revealed later that when Will and Harry are having this huge thing, as Will is like, Africa was my thing. And they like almost get in this like physical fight over Africa.
Yeah. And then they do get in a physical fight later over Meg. So wait, let's just start to like, I think let's like break down how the relationship dissolves. Because really, I think ultimately the biggest dissolution is between him and Willie.
When we get to the wedding.
Well, so first we get to Will and Kate's wedding.
Yeah, Will and Kate's wedding. And first Prince Harry meets Kate and they all like laugh. And he's like, we laughed for hours.
Yeah.
And he's like, we laughed so hard. And you're like, what about? And here's what they laughed hard about is William, Africa was his thing. And he loved to have themed birthday parties. And one of his birthday parties was themed out of Africa. Then the next themed birthday party is the one where Harry like doesn't know what he's gonna be, so he goes to a charity shop. He goes to it was like a known costume shop in like Balmore.
Right, it's not even a charity shop. And he's going through the racks, and he finds this charming little Nazi costume.
Hilarious, really. So he sends a picture
on like the first camera phone to Kate and Will
group chat, and they're like, "That's hilarious.
That's hysterical. I love that."
It's really hysterical. He buys it. He wears it to the party. The picture gets out. A
few days later, and the whole the cancellation begins. One of the first big cancellations. It's sort of the pre-big cancel era.
And Harry gets canceled, and this also I found like
and he's
Harry trying to
the
cancel
tediousness, the self-calling in.
Well, Will also like thought it was hilarious, and like so did Kate, but like
I didn't think that he was trying to be it's their fault. I thought was the whole like self-flagellation to be incredibly tedious and like just being and to this day I go to Berlin and go to the Holocaust Museum and I spoke with rabbis and I know how important the contribution of the Jewish people is to the history of Britain.
I mean, but you're literally Prince Harry, like you have to do that.
Yeah.
He couldn't have been like, that's hilarious.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know, but it's just like this is the thing, this dichotomy between him being like, I am this woke millennial.
And Meghan was probably like, she's kind of proofreading it.
Who will defend my wife, and like, I will say all these statements, and I will say that colonialism is bad.
And
but then it's just like, and yet you're gonna mow down like 30 folk in Afghanistan.
And on my 900th trip to Africa, I realized all I was doing was taking. And then I gave. And by gave, I mean I took a HIV test with Rihanna.
Oh, in Barbados, yeah.
Yes.
The HIV test with Rihanna is really, really... And in the book, I feel like he's like, royal life.
She's kind of, trying to make a joke out of that. And he's like, oh.
It's one of those things where you're like, babe, I love that you're sort of saying that, but I'm like, there actually isn't enough of that in this book.
He needs so much more #royal life.
Because it's like, I think what is missing from this book is that like he references all the royal stuff kind of on the edges, just like the constant like charities and events and functions and trips. Well, that's what's even funny
about #royal life. If you're like, oh, I'm holding 2 gooses that are dead by the neck, that's so much more royal life to me than like, yeah, I met Rihanna and we got a HIV test.
Because so much of this book just takes place like in his own like cramped basement garden, just being like crying and like being sad and just being like, I was playing Xbox and watching Friends. And I'm kind of like, can you be just a little bit more honest about actually what's going on? Okay, so the Kate Will Meghan
and then he
dissolution.
Does this thing that's also like classic, like when anyone gets married, and I feel like we see this in like a lot of any like drew any vow, he's like, I lost my brother when he got married.
Yeah.
But did you really have him?
Yeah. It's like,
in the first place?
I think that what they had was some of these classic, like, male archetypal British rich person, hunting things. I mean, at the very end of the book, when he has this, he's talking about a time when he remembers joy with his brother.
And they're hunting.
And we killed enough goose to feed the town. They're like in Spain.
So much goose.
And they put their arms around each other, which is like a rare physical, affectionate embrace.
And doesn't like William say like, oh, like I still love you or something like that?
I don't know if they say I love you, but they're like, this was amazing, and they have this sense of filial pride, and he's like, but then I realized it was all about death. My life is about death. And that's like Jared Morninger just like being like, you know, really putting in the literary narrative there. But like, I think like those moments were actually not necessarily that close. They were just kind of them being like
all of it
rich
so
lads together.
Tense and British.
Yeah.
The way he describes earlier stuff and their tension seemed to me pretty classic sibling stuff. I was like, this is not crazy.
Like the
early childhood stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty
when they were
kind
just
of
like fighting, and like Will was just like, you're a little younger brother, like scram.
And he was like, fine, I'm going to watch Family Guy like in a different room.
So then it starts to get more tense. So first there's the lip gloss incident when Meghan asked to borrow Kate's lip gloss because Meghan is such a boisterous American. Meg asked to borrow Kate's lip gloss, an American thing. Meg forgot hers, worried she needed some, and turned to Kate for help. Kate, taken aback, went into her handbag and reluctantly pulled out a small tube.
So
Meg
British.
squeezed some onto her finger and applied it to her lips. Kate grimaced.
Wouldn't it be worse if she applied it directly to lip?
Right. The finger to me is the like, the sanitary
being
solution.
like weirdly polite.
Well, it's like, what did Kate think she was going to do when she asked to borrow lip gloss? Like, put it on a Q-tip?
She's just like, you would never buy my lip gloss. It's also just like the constant need to reapply lip gloss.
I mean, they're both basic girls. Wait,
yeah.
Okay.
Then there's the Kate, Meghan, the hormones thing.
Wait. I want to act this scene out. So they go to their renovated house and they're trying to like get past all of this like tension between the two couples. Kate looked out into the garden, gripping the edges of the leather so tightly that her fingers were white, and said she was owed an apology. Meg asked.
For what?
You hurt my feelings, Meghan.
When? Please tell me.
I told you I couldn't remember something, and you said it was my hormones.
What are you talking about?
Kate mentioned a phone call in which they discussed the timing of wedding rehearsals. Meg said.
Oh, yeah, I remember. You can remember something. And I said it's not a big deal. It's baby brain because you'd had just baby. It's hormones.
Kate's eyes widened. Yes, you talked about my hormones. We're not close enough for you to talk about my hormones. Meg's eyes got wide too. She looked genuinely confused.
I'm really sorry I talked about your hormones. That's just how I talk to my girlfriends.
Willie pointed at Meg. It's rude, Meghan. It's not what's done here in Britain.
Kindly take your finger out of my face.
Ooh!
Jesus!
Honey, the tea is spilling.
Ow!
The actual Real Housewives of that scene is
really
insane.
Basically,
I can't think of anything.
Kate is Kathy Hilton.
Kate is absolutely
Meg is Rihanna.
or Dorinda.
Yeah,
like
it also could be
we are not close enough to talk about my hormones.
It's also a little Luann and Bethany when Bethany like doesn't know like driver politics courtesy, and Luann is like, "This is my driver. We don't talk about like my husband, the Count, in front of my driver. That's not how it's done."
And Bethany is just like, "I'm sorry, I thought we were New Yorkers."
Yeah, sorry, I say what's on my mind. She's an American.
Celebrity Book Club.
We have to talk about Afghanistan.
Okay, so literally a third of this book is Harry going to Afghanistan and killing members of the Taliban.
And becoming a pilot. And him just being so bloodthirsty for the Taliban and just being like, I would do anything to shoot him and more and more. And he's like always like doing so many trainings that made me already so nauseous, where they're like
just hearing about the Apache helicopter. Yeah.
Just like dropping and then him like lifting it up, and like he just joins in this way because of course he talks about September 11th, and it's just obviously like so boy British syndrome of just like, I need to go to war because I need something to do and I need to be a hero. And he keeps on talking about like whenever he has to go home, he's always like, oh, my cavalry heroes.
Yeah, I mean,
miss what you're doing out there.
You know, it's also like this comes back. This whole part of the book felt very Buttigieg to me, especially in the justification for war simply being that you need to protect your fellow
country.
And
like soldiers.
Your fellow soldiers. It's like, well, if they weren't at war, you wouldn't need to protect them. And it's like, I think this is what's so insane about him, because it's like, this is America's war. Like, this is not Britain's war. Britain is like basically a client
and he
state of
does
the
kind of
United
recognize
States.
that at the end. He's like, and a lot of Brits were mad that
Right.
America brought us into this war.
But he never questions why we're in Afghanistan. And he's just being like, well, we're there and the Taliban are bad. So I found this part where he's talking about the killing to be really, really chilling. So he's just talked about how they're waiting around for their call. Then they like get in the Apache and they go after these like Taliban guys who were like doing some sort of like shooting drill. And then they were like, oh, we're going to find the Taliban. They've been like shooting drill. The instructor, the high-value target, was on a motorbike, one of his students on the back. We screamed towards them, clocked them moving along at 40 kilometers per hour, one of them carrying a hot-barreled PK machine gun. I held my thumb over the cursor, watched the screen, waited. There! I pulled one trigger to fire the pointing laser and another to fire the missile. The thumbstick I fired was remarkably similar to the thumbstick for the PlayStation game I'd just been playing. The missile hit just short of the motorbike spokes. Textbook. Exactly where I'd been taught to aim. Too high, you might send it over the top of his head. Too low, you'd take out nothing but dirt and sand. Delta Hotel. Don't get that reference. Direct hit. I followed up with a 30mm. Where the motorbike had been was now a cloud of smoke and flames. Well done, Dave said. We spooped back to camp, critiqued the video. Perfect kill. We played some more PlayStation. Turned in early.
Chilling your stomach. It's like
chilling.
You don't actually know the difference between PlayStation
you literally are like,
and war.
Perfect kill. More play. It's just like, oh, that's okay.
You're literally proving like every anti like PlayStation mom, right? In the Taliban, the war part, I literally, especially as someone of just watching Zero Dark 30 experience, I was a little like, sis, move it along. But that's also J.R. Mordinger being like, no, we're also going to write this like war epic.
J.R. Mordinger's writing, as good as it is, I think reveals all the like inconsistencies and hypocrisies in Harry's worldview, because he is like this immature young boy who
PlayStation playing, girlfriend not having,
and so much of the book is all of these like I think Tina Brown, who wrote a really good review of the book, friend of the pod, Tina Brown. She says that like Harry was born in the wrong century. Like Harry has this very archaic view of.
Well, it's very British. It's very like Revolutionary War. Like time is now to go to war.
He goes, the expeditions to the North Pole, like him, like
yeah,
you know,
1805.
The big like march that he does when he gets trench foot and he can't go any further with his mates when he's in army training.
And he's like, no, I have to. The North Pole thing was the most like 1700s thing to me, where it's like they went to the North Pole for charity, and it's a little bit just like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah,
it's just so like men can explore.
Yeah.
And you're like, we've explored.
We've been there.
We know what the North Pole is. And
to some extent, this is the problem. You know, the crisis of masculinity now is that men don't go to war anymore, right? And they don't go to the North Pole, and we've discovered everything. And so there's this longing there, but he can't really like articulate what that desire is. He's just being
He does say, I will give it to him. He does say at one point, like, I feel like he kind of realizes a little bit the war is like meaningless, and he's like, oh, the more we kill, like the more they'll be.
Oh, the more Taliban will create, which is 100% true. And it's like, and so, babe, connect the dots.
What's
and that's
the next
him, step in that
then
thought?
He's kind of just like, and then Will's wedding.
Okay, wait, the scene where like Charles and Harry are always getting like so hot in the Sandringham castle, and they try to crack a window, and then like, and they're like, and like we cherish the few minutes like before Elizabeth would notice, and then the Queen would be like, is there a draft in here? And then like a footman would race to close it, and him and Pa would just be like, oh, God damn it, this
like,
cold,
can we please
this
get
cold
a
ass
going?
bitch like needs to have 18 fires going, being stoked by an army of footmen.
Bagpipes are playing. She's whisking her famous salad dressing, but then they made her husband like actually sound like so American, and like they were like, yeah, he lived like sports, hunting, beer.
Oh, yeah, he did like beer. I mean, the hunting was
the hunting is
so
very
American,
British.
Because they're hunting like
American.
pigeon and fowl.
And
they're not hunting like deer. Also, in the Harry and Will fight, when they're having that like tense summit about like Easter, about how like she didn't get an Easter present. When like Kate is accusing like Meghan of not having given her an Easter present, this is like this straight culture thing where I think like Britain is like the straightest country in the world, where because then they're also fighting about wedding seating, and Harry's like, we didn't get to sit together at Pippa's wedding.
Yeah,
and we desperately wanted to. Like, Meghan and Harry are so codependent, they like had to sit together. And
it's very like weddings, yes, you go with your lover, but it's also like you're with your lover all the time.
Calm down, like take the opportunity to sit somewhere else. And Harry was being so like,
people.
This is, and I guess at their wedding, Harry had Will and Kate sit together, but then they like got up and switched places, and he was really offended because they had wanted the wedding to be this celebration of American values where you do sit with your partner. Because to like celebrate Meg.
So
and it's just like, Harry,
this makes
shut up. I was just like, I mean, the whole third of the book, I was just being like, shut up. Like, you're being so petty and annoying about everything. And it's not like the dissolution of your friendship and like your family isn't real, but it's just like you're just getting like, so bogged down in all of this insane pettiness.
And just also, it's like, I'm sorry, like being like girls text drama.
Yeah.
Leave it to the girls.
Yes.
You do
not.
Like, yeah.
And this is the sexist
thing.
thing.
Be like, a man.
Be a man and don't give a fuck about your like girls text drama instead of being like, oh, I need to defend my woman. When he says that, he was like, Pa and Willie were mad at me because they never defended their girlfriends. And I will defend Meg. Basically being like, Charles killed Diana and Kate is bony and mad.
I am on Harry's side for that. I think he like should defend her more than like William has like never said a thing.
Will could choose to be a more modern heir, but he is just.
But that's what I'm saying.
Well,
he's not. He's just like. I just think he is Harry. Whatever. Like, this is why I am still like team Harry Meghan. Is that just like they're talking and like talking shit and gossiping and being real, and love is messy, and like we need to evolve and down with the monarchy, and like he can defend his girlfriend in like Us Weekly if he wants.
Well, I do think he can defend his girlfriend in Us Weekly if he wants, even though I do think it's like also an insane waste of time. But it's like, I also think that like you can just literally have fun and not care. And it's like, I don't see him doing that. Him just being like, we need to have a very like, it's like they moved to LA so they could have a very self-serious podcast, so they could launch a brand named after their son, which every rich girl does. so that they could just be like, we are changing things, and instead of just being like, you know what, like this is funny, and be more like Grimes about it and like posting a random headline and being like, lol, not the post.
Yeah, I think actually where the list is like, I don't know, like all of them could be having a little more fun.
No.
They're British. Like, I think like the fact that like Kate like can't even like laugh about like lip gloss and hormones.
Yeah, I mean it's tragic.
It's really tragic. Though
it's literally tragic.
Would love to know what happened. Look, days before weddings, things get really tense.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see us like really
coming to
blows over tailoring.
We're on Nantucket.
Yeah.
You're like staying like across the pond.
Yeah, you can see my house, and I'm like, you see with like your dad's binoculars,
and you're just being like, sorry, my cat's like tuxedo is fitting weird. And I'm just being like, I don't have time for this, Lily. Yeah. Do you see what I'm going through on Twitter right now?
No, literally. And I'd be like, log onto Twitter, and it would someone just being like, I can't believe Stephen is getting married in Nantucket. And you'd be like, you have no idea what I'm going through. And you'd be like, look at this shirt. It's pulling a little bit at the shoulders. And I'm like, well, Orzo's tux literally is getting wet from the pond.
And Orzo's actually really scared, and now Orzo is traumatized, just like Meg's dogs. Okay.
I just want to read a few things from my notes.
Please, please, please.
FaceTiming with Tyler Perry. Because they never met him before they subletted his house. They just FaceTimed.
Let's just go back and forth. Fergie clipping the lock of Diana's hair and giving it to Harry. And it's like,
she's so sketchy.
She's actually insane. Fergie's kind of an unsung hero of this book.
I know.
Also, when she gives him the Xbox and she's like, your mum bought this in Paris just before she died.
Oh, yeah. That's a, like, dead woman's Xbox.
The Beyond the Grave Xbox? It's kind of like, that's a really weird lie, but okay.
Well, also it is, I feel like Fergie being, like, a little bit weird, like, going into Diana's house and, like, seeing the Xbox, and there's probably, like, other stuff that I'm sure she took and was just so, like, Xbox.
I know, if that were true, like, that would have to happen. Also, him losing his virginity to an old woman behind the pub.
Yeah, and he's like, and it was weird, and we pulled and tussled, and it was behind the, like, Glottenberg pub.
He's being a little bit like, I was groomed.
Yeah, but it's like, that's the most British thing ever to have, like, a graduate style.
Or,
like, you need to
or
be.
fuck your cousin.
Yeah. Fajitas for Meg.
Oh, she loves fajitas.
Fajitas in the delivery room.
When they have the second baby in America.
Yeah, he gets burgers, she gets fajitas.
Yeah, because he keeps making all this, like, dichotomy
To
between,
go
like...
fajitas in the delivery room.
Okay,
the porta potties at the wedding.
The portaloos.
The portaloos.
Which he says that, like, he was like, we were not inspired by Kate's portaloos.
But, like, we wanted people to, like, be comfortable.
The Queen, who has in earplugs at her Jubilee, which is actually so professional DJ of her.
Yeah, very Daniel.
Because our friend of the pod, Daniel, physical therapy,
it's always like, you need to go to an audiologist.
Get custom-made earplugs to protect your hearing if you are, like, in loud spaces a lot. He's very scent forward. He's constantly describing scents in this book. How Prince
Scent
Charles
is so tied to memory.
Prince Charles bathed in l'eau sauvage.
Well, I also bet Prince Charles doesn't shower. He just bathes.
Okay, you're being so, like, white people don't use washcloths.
Well, I think he is.
Oh, well,
like,
they're also
big,
basin. He's
sponge.
constantly talking about
Yes.
clawfoot tubs and calling sinks basins.
Shout out to the cavalry. Elton not singing Candle in the Wind.
Oh, that was a smart choice.
Yeah.
And he requested that he sing at this, like, Africa concert, and Elton was like, that's morbid. Like, I'm just going to do this other song, and, like, that'll be fine. Hello, Diana having a waterbed.
90s stuff.
Like, that was fab. And she's being so the 80s interior with her, like...
She's so the 80s interior.
I mean, again, every girl is still the most Diana Pill person on earth, and we all are.
Only really happened... I mean, it came back, I would say, 2 years ago.
Waterbeds or Diana Core?
No, Diana Core.
Yeah. I mean, waterbeds are never coming back because they're really, really inefficient.
Dog filters.
Oh, the first time he sees Meghan, it's on Instagram and she's in a dog filter.
And he's, like, describing it like it's still the sexiest thing he's ever seen. He was like, and I opened my iPhone and there was this new filter where you could put dog ears on a photo.
And he's like, and despite the dog ears, I still felt she was heart-stoppingly beautiful.
So beautiful.
She took my breath away.
Oh, I could see the kindness in her eyes.
And so then, like, he messages his friend being like, who's that girl? And she's like, oh, you're the fifth person to message me. Like, who is this girl? Yeah, it's my friend. She's on Suits. She's like, do you want me to put you in touch? So then the friend sets it up. And then, of course, Meghan, who's never heard of Google, is like, oh, this is just a nice guy named Harry who likes elephants.
And I guess I can look at his feed, and he travels a lot.
Yeah, he's just a cool elephants guy.
But then it's like when his Todger gets frostbitten, he has his mate send him to, like, a special dermatologist and doesn't tell the dermatologist. And then the dermatologist, like, looks up and goes, oh, it's you.
Oh, and, like, sees that he's Harry.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, you're random.
Okay, that's random. Stop putting, like, Elizabeth Arden cream on.
Right. And we know you've all heard
we've heard the clip.
We don't have to get into it. We're familiar.
The last line of the book is about how there's a bird in the house.
Or the hummingbird in Tyler Perry's house.
And he sets it free.
Yeah.
And the metaphor for his life. He's in LA. I was a little bit like, I would have rather ending on just, like, hate the press, rule the monarchy, rather than saying, like, I set, like, the hummingbird free.
Well, it's this whole thing where he's basically saying England is about death. So it's this, like, when he's remembering that moment with his brother where they were happy when they killed. And then he's like, you know, but even in our finest moments, my best memories somehow involve death. Our lives were built on death, our brightest days shadowed by it. Looking back, I didn't see spots of time, but dances with death. We christened and crowned, graduated and married, passed out and passed over our beloved's bones. The Tower of London was held together with the blood of animals. Used by original builders 1,000 years ago, we were a death cult, like, after laying grandpa to rest, have we not had our fill? You know, why were we here looking along the edge of that undiscovered country? And then he goes, but maybe that's a more apt description of America. and I was already gone on my way to California. A voice in my head saying, enough death, enough. So it's like he's basically saying California is life, England is death. England is old, California is new.
I was the burden, now I'm set free in LA.
I was the burden, and now I can just like be yoga and avocado toast
and podcast.
Like have like a big clean podcast house and like not have so many dusty sofas from sofa.com.
Celebrity Book Club.
Okay, so we're going to switch it up a little bit and do segments not on Harry and Meghan, which we did in part 1.
We're going to do it for the rest of the crew and kind of a pick your own adventure.
Yeah,
William, Kate.
Aunt Margot, Queen Elizabeth, Willie, Paul.
Camilla. I remember reading the story about how William and Kate love their favorite gastropub in Frogmore.
Yeah.
And it was very, like, updated.
Yeah, they're
it's updated gastropub.
Well, because they've also,
it's like duck fat fries.
It's duck fat fries. And again, it's just like and this is, again, the dichotomy between it's like they're going to a gastropub and like there's some pubs, but like they're over it. And it's just like Meghan and Harry are just like freaking out and being like sobbing, like when he tells her to go to Whole Foods and he's like, I gave her detailed instructions. Take a left.
Here's the map.
Here's the map to Whole Foods, my love. And it's just like, actually come all the way down with her.
And Oprah's like, Meghan, will you share the map of Whole Foods? with us?
And Meghan's like starting to cry. She's like, no, I can do it. It's too traumatizing.
Yeah.
Camilla and Charles are a little bit more cream of salmon.
Yes. I think Camilla is like 7 martinis, not really picking at the cream of salmon. That like, because he's always like, Paul's chef packed my freezer with cream of chicken pies.
Oh, I do love how Gan, the Queen Mum. So Queen Elizabeth's mom is like drinking a martini at like Sandringham, where like they're having that discussion when he's young and he's like 14 having a gin and tonic.
Right, and that was his like, first.
And she's like 103 having martinis, and I'm just like, fab.
No, and they were like...
Oh, and that was his first gin and tonic, and no one noticed his rebellion.
I think it was a martini. He was like, I'll have one too.
I think he did gin and tonic because he's such a GNT fan.
I honestly...
We can go back
and fact check. And also, listeners, I'm sure you're all reading along.
Yeah. I think it was Gan Martini, him.
And
GNT.
it's like, and that's what's so he says he's Stewie, and that's what's so Stewie is like, he thinks he is so Stewie sipping this GNT or martini. Yeah. And no one cares.
No one cares.
No one cares.
No, I mean, that's why he identifies with Stewie, another major character in this book. I think the Queen is very having like 3 raspberries. I feel like,
but isn't it also
she's pecking, or she's pecking at a pheasant? Like,
she definitely eats more because in Spencer they make such a big deal about how like Diana was bulimic, and the Queen is like, the chef made this. Like, we're having the cream of asparagus soup.
She's okay. I mean, she's having the soup, but I also think it's small portions and she's picking.
Yeah,
but she's old as hell.
Right, but in her prime, I think she was like finishing the 3 ounces of salmon. And then the soup.
I think Fergie is a little more pizza night. Like, she's cool
also,
aunt.
You know what Fergie is? She is literally having that crazy ass Caesar salad we had in England that was like a bread bowl of Caesar.
Yeah, a bread bowl, like a pizza bread bowl with Caesar inside. She's also kind of Stouffer's, like...
But like whatever the brand, and I think also she's kind of pioneer woman. Like, she has a recipe she thinks is like famous, but it's like pretty basic. She's like, my famous lasagna. Yeah, and it's just like a little bit like ground beef, prepackaged carrots,
right?
And like
Kraft. Sheets from Sainsbury's,
and it's like cheddar on it. And she's like, oh, Beatrice, she won't touch it now. She's watching her weight, but she used to love it.
Okay, and Pippa is so Daily Harvest. Know what I'm talking
about?
There
was like not enough Pippa in this book.
No, I know. Hashtag where's Pippa?
Where's Pippa? It's like, I miss the Pippa days when we were talking about that bouquet.
I know. Well, and although I was just thinking, again, I just come away feeling bad for Kate because I'm like, I mean, she got upstaged by her own sister at her own wedding. You know, that's brutal.
It is.
So, of course, she's going to be like, you never got me an Easter present, as I'm like painstakingly renovating this cottage and I want to kill everyone. Okay, how do they live?
I mean, I think...
Well, Kate and Will are very modern farmhouse.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a dark green kitchen.
Dark green kitchen.
Marble countertop.
Light marble countertop.
Yep.
it's like comfortable nooks, but it still has a sense of tradition with modernity.
Yeah, and there's obviously like so many books about English history, but also fashion books because Kate's a total fashion
I think it's like huge Herb Ritz book.
Oh yeah, will never be opened.
Never. It's like Greek.
Yeah.
Tons of like I think like wooden toys for the kids.
Yeah. You think they're so like Copenhagen like
I think it's Copenhagen toys? Stuff, and then I think like.
But don't you think she's also being like?
I think George is like demanding Barbies we don't see.
Absolutely demanding.
Like
you know
Malibu
what? One of his
house.
7 nannies is the one who lets him play with the Barbies.
Yeah, because some are
and
told
there's like
not to.
There's like a back room at like Tagamore Cottage where he is allowed to play with Barbies, but for the most time, Kate's just being like, George, please play with the toys that were made by a local toy maker in Leeds because we're celebrating British producers.
And it's Leeds Day.
Yeah.
Today is awareness for Leeds toy makers.
Right. And he has to like cut a ribbon on his own toy that says like we celebrate Leeds.
Camilla.
Don't you think she like is more like random teacup collection?
Yeah, I also was gonna say I feel like Camilla is still like so horny and like putting on a slip.
She is the mistress of all time.
I know, and she's just like smoking a cigarette, being like, and it's like a
so
long.
She's so magazine. Yes, she's like still reading magazines.
She's paging through.
Lily just licked her finger to do Camilla.
Yeah, and it's like, when are you coming to bed, Charles? I'm gonna get tired. You're not gonna just like let me go to bed like this. And he's like still in like a full robe, slippers, PJs.
He's very like my robe has a waistcoat on it. Like I have a dressing like bodice underneath.
And they're like
my pajamas.
Both behind their like Japanese dressing rooms with an assistant who is undressing them.
Well, the part of the beginning was like you would never know if you like walked into a room accidentally at the palace and like you might knock over Prince Charles, who was doing his like back exercises up against a door, and he'd be like, "No, please don't open the door." So he's still like doing weird calisthenics and like they're all
old-timey kind of lifting stuff.
What do they wear? Okay, let's talk about Kate's casual style.
Yeah, it's like.
Do you think she is?
Flats.
I feel like she's probably such a complex in her head about Meg being like LAF leisure that she's like terrified of sweatpants
and like has some, but she doesn't, and has yoga pants, but would never wear them outside.
And she would wear like the most weird, like stretchy, like whatever the British Zara is, like pants that like basically are yoga pants, but like are weird, like. More Kathy Griffin like kind of style pants.
Prince Harry also refers to William at one point wearing a jumper, and
that's
a
sweater.
Oh, in okay, in British.
Yeah, that just means sweater.
Okay, the jeans. When I was looking at these retro early 2000s pictures of William, and his jeans were so wide. In like not a jingo
that
way.
Photo you posted that was so butte.
Yeah, it was like math. He was belling to the who.
He's never had a good sense of proportion, I don't think.
I think now he's being untucked and bonobos, I think.
Yeah.
But then does have, like, some British tailoring that Charles is, because it's like...
But he's not Charles in a double-breasted suit all
I was going
to
say Charles is so fab in his double-breasted.
Yeah. Which he can pull off because he is very tall.
And I think William should get a double-breasted. And I feel like William is afraid to and is just always, like, navy suit, white shirt.
Well, and then he has the chip on his shoulder about Dad. Are people going to think I'm copying Dad?
Right. So let me wear, like, the pointiest... He has, like, realtor style.
Will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's navy suit,
because it's a little
shirt,
bit blazer, over shirt, like under jumper.
And, yeah, and then it's, like, brown wingtip.
Yeah.
That's, like, so skinny.
Yeah. Fergie, again, because she is this like cool, like the coolest 90s babysitter, like is being just like a little bit more
crazy fashion,
like fun knit sweater, like a big chunky like multicolored cable knit.
Yeah, ridiculous knits, tights.
Yeah.
She is playing with proportion. It's interesting blazers.
Yeah, because I do feel like she's like, I imagine she's maybe a bit of a more imposing woman. But maybe I just think that she's famous and she's actually tiny in person. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's that celebrity thing with her. She probably is small. Kate, to me, seems kind of 5'10".
I think Kate's tall for sure.
Yeah, in like a field
and she's probably
hockey-ish
always
way.
wearing flats to like not make
Yeah,
Will look short.
Phil.
Because that's her solemn duty, and she does it begrudgingly. As she like puts
doesn't wanna
her bony
make
body into all these long sleeve dresses from British makers. I mean, just the sense of duty and obligation in everything she does. It's just like, it's exhausting just
And
thinking about it.
Always so like sad in Us Weekly when they're just like dressed like Kate.
Yeah.
And then they list the most boring 3 items of clothing you've like ever heard of.
Yeah, and you're just like, just be absolutely trapped in your boring gilded cage till the end of time.
Yeah.
The Queen, she wears
like
her
old pantsuits.
all her
her
pastels,
skirts,
her funny
her
skirt
Easter
suits.
little thing. And Harry's like,
Obsessed with
Gran had a
Easter.
wicked sense of humor.
Yeah,
He was like, no one knew that. People love saying that.
They were
about someone who's not funny.
Yeah. They were
No, they
always like
seriously
making
had
eye contact. He was always like, when I'd whisper a joke into her ear, like, what was your hilarious joke?
Wicked sense of
Well,
humor.
there's this part in this essay, Royal Bodies, which I will post on our show page. But the author talks about going to some function at Buckingham Palace, and like the Queen is kind of making her way through, and people are so kind of like afraid to talk to her because of all the protocol that she actually could sense the Queen wanted to talk to people, and people are kind of like backing away and like looking overly interested in the art on the wall so that they don't have to like actually accidentally talk to the Queen.
Which is, that's such a problem with the royals.
Right, and like no one can handle it. It's just like there's too much expectation built into it.
Once you're that famous, then no one actually wants to hang out with you.
Yeah.
They just want to look at you.
It's a bit lonely.
Who are you in the book out of like all the royals?
Right, round 2.
I mean, I think you are like your Fergie's daughters.
I'm Eugenie and Beatrice.
Yeah.
The ugly ducklings.
But they're like crazy and wear hats and just like...
I do love hats.
You're wearing a baseball hat right now from one of your estates in like Frogmore.
Yeah, it's literally from one of my estates. Yeah, I guess I'm Eugenie, and I'm like 37th in line to the throne.
Yeah, it's just very 37th. Where you're like, you are getting a check from Grandma, but like just dwindled down.
Yeah.
37
No,
ways.
there's not that much, and I am ultimately like sharing an apartment with my sister on the estate, just be like bickering, being like, oh, I hate our $1.9 million apartment. It's not big enough.
And you're like, I can't move though because like I have to like stay here, but I want to move to Spain.
Who are you in the book? You did go to college, so maybe you're Will. But you're not balding yet.
Not yet. I mean, I also just like want to be one of Harry's like insane badass bodyguards, but like I don't have that brute strength.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who you are. You're when he goes to Vegas, you're like the sluts that they bring back to the hotel
who take the
photos of him naked while they're playing strip billiards. And you have your like Nokia, and you're just being like, oops. Like,
no, when that happened, I was like, oh, that'd be me. And he's like, how dare she? How dare she? And it's like, obviously. And I'm pulling out and I'm flipping out the Nokia, and it's like, I'm like, don't click,
you're
click.
immediately texting me 7 blurry photos of this hotel room, just being like and then leaving
like
me a voice
corner.
note from the bathroom. And then I'm just being like, go back and get a better photo, bitch.
And you're like, this isn't good enough. Okay, I need something better to send 9 other gay guys. Okay, we figured it out.
Yeah, I think we nailed it. I mean,
I guess at this point now, let's give our rating.
Actually, give our rating. Listen, I'm not going to lie. Having read so many memoirs, I would say that we are experts on the topic. I am giving this book 4.5 frozen penises out of 5. Frostbitten Todges.
Frostbitten Todges.
I think like it's incredibly like compelling writing. There's so much dirt in here that people of this kind of industry, like politics, whatever, like never reveal.
Yeah, that's almost even, I'm with you at 4.5. I cannot remember that word, Badoo. The pen. Bureaus out of bureaus. It's just like, this is it. When they say in the history books, I mean, this is the most, I feel like the craziest thing to happen to the monarchy ever.
Yeah. It's absolutely wild.
It's literally wild.
To get this kind of an insight.
It's like they can't even talk about hormones. So the fact that we're learning about what Kate is texting Pa.
Yeah.
It's just...
It's an insane sleigh.
And the basicness of it all, but you're like, the historical with the basicness combined, make it. That's what makes it so crazy.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I could be reading Pete Buttigieg. I could be literally reading like Rob Lowe's book, honestly, kind of talking about how he loves making roast chicken with his wife.
Right. But instead I'm reading Prince Harry's book and how the entire monarchy is like fighting over his wife who loves Eat, Pray, Love.
And she's like really educated because she loves Eat, Pray, Love. And it's the details that he gives. And again, yeah, shout out to JR.
Yeah, because it's like I'm not coming away with this thinking that Harry is a genius, nor do I think that, like, you know, he's deserving of, like, all of the, whatever, the sympathy or the hate that he gets. And I will say this, he is definitely milking it.
Milking it, and what was it, 500 pages?
500 pages, a 6-episode Netflix special, the Oprah special, the podcast.
Really is like, what's next?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be an adaptation. I mean, The Crown already exists,
right.
But like,
which she watches, and
there will be a movie.
Thank you for
coming on this journey with us.
This journey
all the way to England and back. Harry, best of luck in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, seriously, have us over. And
if you ever want any tips on podcasting,
if you want to come on the pod, or roast chicken tips, try a little za'atar. Yeah. You know, funk it up.
That's really advanced. I don't know if they're there yet.
Okay, maybe in a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Best. Celebrity Book Club is presented by Prologue Projects of Adelaide College. The show is produced by Benjamin Frisch of Windsor Castle, with editorial support from Leon Nafak of Frogmore, Andrew Parsons of Bagshot Park, Arlene O'Revelo of Sandringham House, and Madeline Kaplan of Balmoral. Our production manager is Persia Verlin of Buckinghamshire. Original theme song by Stephen Phillips Horst of Highgrove. Artwork by Teddy Blanks at Chips Frogmore. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CBT The Pod. Subscribe on your favourite podcast app, whether it's Tamarisk House, Anma Hall, or Holyrood Palace. And don't forget to tell your mates about us. And don't also forget to go to patreon.com for access to our VIP lounge, an exclusive bonus podcast released every Friday. That is one of the easiest ways to enrich your cultural faculties. I hope you're well and have a good weekend.